strategy. It's quite a common tennis trading entry point. And you might think, how can this still be effective? But what really makes this effective, as you're going to see in a strategy anyway, is the way we approach this. Now, the old school way of approaching this would be to approach this almost with a betting mindset. So you'd be opposing the first set winner, and you're hoping that the losing player scores a break point or wins the second set, and you can take advantage of the price swing there. But in this day and age, that's not sophisticated enough to get a long-term profit. And what we're going to be doing is taking advantage of the price fluctuations that can happen in the meantime. So you're going to see more of this in more detail as we move along anyway. But as you probably guessed, so the scenario we're looking for is that the favorite has lost the first set and the underdog is now the favorite. Now, you could use this strategy on any player. You could use this on any player that has won the first set. But for now, I am suggesting that if you know, as you're starting out with this method, use this strategy when the underdog wins the first set, because you're going to see the best results and the more frequent wins this way. With time, and as you improve your match reading and you can spot those opportunities better and better, you could use this on any player that wins the first set. It doesn't have to be the underdog winning the first set. So any player that wins the first set, you could use this on them if you anticipate that their opponent is going to get back into it. And it could be something as simple as your pre-match research indicating that it could be a very, very tight match. And that could be your reasoning for entering the trade there. But if you're just starting out, I highly suggest just only get involved in those scenarios where an underdog has won the first set. And ideally, you kind of want it to be a close first set as well in this scenario. And I'm talking to get the best results for now. This is what I'm talking about. I'm saying look for a close first set that probably finished 7-5 or 6-4 or was won via a tiebreak. And these are probably going to be the best scenarios to get involved in. Underdog wins the first set, but it was very, very close. Those are the best, those are the great times when the favorite does usually just get back into it right away. And you're going to have your best results getting involved in those scenarios. But as you get more and more experience, you will spot other entry points, but that is totally down to you as and when you spot them. And obviously, once we spotted that, we're going to lay the match underdog at the start of the second set. And I'm just making this clear, just so there's no confusion. We're laying the player that was the underdog before the match. Because obviously, once they win the second set, they're not going to be the underdog anymore. They're going to be the favorite in most cases. So we're laying that match underdog, who is now the favorite, at the start of the second set. If it sounds confusing, wait until the live examples. I'm sure most of you understand it anyway. But from there, if the favorite can then put pressure on the underdog, and this is the pre-match favorite as well, or scores a break point, then we're going to get that big, big swing that we were talking about. We're going to get that big swing in our favor and a chance to lock in and guarantee a profit. So keep all that in mind. And keep this in mind, that with this trade, we don't need the favorite to win the second set to profit. This is what makes tennis trading very, very differently from tennis betting. Someone who's having a bet, an in-play bet on tennis, is probably just going to have a bet that player is going to win the second set. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the favorite to put pressure, at least, on the underdog and look like they're going to get back into it, because the markets are going to overreact on just the break point possibility. Now, for us to make the maximum profit that we're looking for, we are going to want the break point to be scored by the favorite, and then they're going to get back in the match. But we don't need them to go on and win the second set. Very, very often when I use this strategy, I get in at the start of the second set, I make my profit, and I could be done within 1 or 2 games, and then I move on to something else. And I don't even hang around to see what happens later on, because there could be another opportunity somewhere else. So I have no idea who goes on to win the match or who goes on to win that second set after that. And that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for that early break point for us to get back into it. And then that's how we're going to profit. So keep in mind, this is not a bet on the favorite to win the match or to win the set from here. We're just looking for that market fluctuation, that in-play path, that, as you know by now, is the essence of tennis trading. So the boomerang method, if I just want to summarize it, is a high-frequency strategy. You should see this sort of scenario pop up very often. As you know, with a lot of these methods, Monday to Thursday, you're going to find a lot of opportunities for this. Men's and women's matches are both very applicable, and I'm not even going to try and say that you'll have your best results on the women's or the best results on the men's with this. I think that they will both be just as good. The men's matches, as has been mentioned, they are a bit more difficult to trade. You're going to find that the price move against you is going to be bigger in the men's matches, but also the price move in your favor is going to be bigger in the men's matches with this strategy. But you could use it equally on both. Obviously, if you do want to just keep it easy in the beginning, you're a beginner, women's matches, probably the best ones to use this on. And it's best used when the price to lay is below 1.60. But honestly, the lower the price, the better with this sort of strategy. And you'll see in the live examples that we're very rarely taking on players even close to that 1.60. Is usually much lower than that. So the lower we can get, the better with this method. That is definitely for sure. So let's move on to the indicators. So what is going to tell us to actually get involved with this method? So you can use the pre-game research. You could have this already marked down as perhaps a favorite looked pretty strong according to the pre-game research, but they've lost the first set. And you think that more than likely now they're going to get back into the match. I mean, those are some pretty good opportunities there. So you could look for that. Obviously, just look for a favorite that is in better form than the underdog. That's usually enough to be an indicator of wanting to get involved with the strategy. But generally, myself, from my own experience, I do kind of use how the first set developed as one of my key bits of information about whether I want to get involved in the in the second set. A close first set is usually a good sign to get involved with it. 7-6, 7-5, 6-4, or a tie break. So especially if the underdog won a very close first set, that shows me that the favorite isn't underperforming that badly and is probably more than likely going to get back into this in the second set. I also like to see though that the losing player has scored a break point during that first set. That's always a good sign as well, because if they've worked out how to score a break point early on in the match, then they're probably going to know how to do it again. So that's always something to look for again. And that stat usually does come up on the actual Betfair interface. So it's not like you have to look hard for it. But one thing to keep in mind as well is that sometimes players can tank the first set. And this is something that you're only going to start to be able to spot when you've got a lot of tennis trading experience, because sometimes a favorite very often can start the match quite slow and they might find themselves 3-love down on games in the first set, and then they just think, you know what, I'm just going to wait until the second set and then I'm going to start to play. So they tank the first set and literally will end up losing the first set 6-1, 6-love sometimes. Sometimes it could be the bagel where they don't win any games at all. And those are actually the most interesting opportunities there, because when a player tanks the first set, I mean, if a player loses the first set 6-love, 6-1, then almost everyone just thinks, okay, there's no way they're getting back into this. They played so badly in the first set that clearly something's wrong with them. Maybe they're carrying an injury. And you're actually going to find that the markets give you a much more generous price to lay the underdog at, or to lay the other player anyway, heading into the second set. So if you can spot that, those are some really, really good opportunities. But like I said, this is definitely for the more advanced or more experienced tennis trader. I mean, if you know the sport of tennis well, then you'll spot these very often, because sometimes, the favorite just doesn't want to try because they want to conserve energy for the second set and what they know is going to be the final set as well, if they can get back into it. So you'll see that happen from time to time. You'll see a player completely tank the first set only to look like a completely changed player in the second set. So do keep a lookout for those. But honestly, if you are new to tennis, then I don't expect you to spot those straight away. But stick to those other indicators. You could use your pre-game research. Look for a close set, or look for a set where a player has won, but the losing player did score a break point in that first set, because that could be another opportunity there. And obviously, we are going to be managing our position. This isn't a bet. We're not having a straight bet on the other player getting back into the game or anything like that. We're going to manage our position. We're going to employ risk mitigation if it doesn't quite go to plan. So you can be quite open with entering with this strategy. Don't think, okay, do I get in? Do I not get in? You could easily get in and just see what happens, especially if it is a favorite, getting back in the match. Because the beauty of getting involved, and this is on the slide, But the beauty of it, getting involved when an underdog wins the first set, is that you've also got the market on your side as well, because the markets are expecting the favorite to get back into the match so much that just a few points, a bit of pressure on the serve of the underdog can be enough to swing the market in such a nice way that we can start to mitigate the risk on the trade and lower our exposure, which then obviously puts us in a much better position. But you're going to see this and understand this a lot more when we get into the actual strategy itself. So the boomerang strategy, let's look at the entry points for this, if you haven't worked it out already. So as mentioned, we're doing this when the favorite loses the first set and set 2 is about to begin. So this is the key part here, is that you want to wait until the underdog is about to serve, and then you're going to lay that underdog with 100% of your stake. A big common mistake with this would just be to lay the underdog right at the start of set 2 when the favorite is about to serve, because what can happen there is that there's only one thing that could possibly go wrong, which usually will go wrong if you ever enter at this point, is that the favorite could concede another break point, and then immediately you're in a very bad position, a position where you probably have to exit the trade completely. So you're better off waiting until the favorite wins their first service game, if they are serving in the first game of the second set. Not just because of the reason I just mentioned, but also you want to see that the favorite actually looks good. I mean, if the favorite wins their service game, if they hold their serve from 40 love or from 40-15, then I'm a lot more confident about this trade. If they look dodgy in that service game and maybe give the underdog a breakpoint opportunity, then I might have to think twice about getting involved in the second set. So wait until the favorite has won their first service game if they serve first in the second set, because then we can see how they play, and then we can make our decision about getting involved, and we potentially avoid that straight loss that could happen in that scenario. Also keep in mind the maximum lay odds of 1.60. I don't like to get involved with odds higher than 1.60. I like to have a much bigger upside than my downside when I'm trading tennis. And to be honest, even anything above 1.50 is pushing it. So keep that in mind. I like to get in below 1.50 when I'm getting involved with the boomerang method. That's just me. But I would very, very strongly advise don't get involved above that mark of 1.60. Don't get involved above there. If you have to wait until the odds go below that, maybe wait until game 2 or game 3 of the second set, then I think that's much more worth it. So try and avoid getting involved above that price. So now let's look at the exit points, and you're going to see what really sets this strategy apart from the rest. It is what we're going to do is we're going to back 25% of the risk anytime that the favorite is pressuring the underdog when they're serving. And this is going to happen a lot, and we're going to be in a good position. So if the game score at any point when the underdog is serving goes to love 30, 15-40, or any break point opportunity, you're just going to back 25% of your risk, because we're going to get a nice big swing in the odds just on that, just on a love 30, 15-40, or a break point opportunity. And so if you have £100 stake in the market, you're just going to back, say, £25 of that, and you're going to benefit from that little fluctuation that is going to be there. And that is going to put us in a nice position where if the trade ultimately does fail and we lose this, then we've minimized the potential loss that we could take. I mean, we haven't totally minimized it, of course, but we've drastically reduced the potential worst case scenario trade just by doing this. So keep this in mind, and you're going to see this in a lot more detail inside the live trading examples anyway. But the key part to this is just to make sure this trade becomes less of a gamble. The markets are going to panic if the favorite puts pressure on the underdog. We're going to get that fluctuation, and we can remove some of the risk from the trade. So the old school way of doing it was just get in the market and hope for that break point to be scored, kind of hope and pray for it. But if we can take some action to reduce the risk, then it does minimize our potential loss if it does go wrong at some point. And that's what we always have to keep in mind when you're trading. So as said, I mean, once we've removed 25%, we've lowered our potential loss on the trade. And then from there, we do let it run until the favorite can score a break point. or until the underdog has served 3 times. And this is another key part of the boomerang method, which sets it apart from the rest. It does set it apart from the rest. And this is the 3 strikes rule. This is how long we're staying in the market. We're going to let the trade go for 3 service games. This is the underdog serving 3 times. And if there's no breakpoint chances, or if no breakpoints are scored, rather, we're going to close the trade for a small loss. That's what we're going to do at that point. If you do feel the favorite by that point, but by the time that they've served 3 service games, if the favorite is getting close and maybe has had a breakpoint chance, didn't quite convert it, then you could continue. You could halve your stake. This is for the more advanced straight trader. But let me just go back to the 3 strikes rule. The main reason for this is that we want a swift and early breakpoint scored by the favorite. That has to be your aim when you're entering with the boomerang method, is that we want the favorite to get back into this very quickly. The quicker the better. And the longer the second set goes without the favorite looking like getting back into it, the less the markets are going to believe that the favorite is going to get back into it. And it starts to just turn into a gamble. It starts to just turn into a big gamble, a big bet that the favorite is going to get back into it. And that's not what we want. We want the markets on our side. We want the markets expecting that the favorite can get back into it, because then that's going to give us a nice price swing. But the longer it goes and the longer the underdog is holding out, the harder this trade gets. So my advice is to employ and stick to this, the 3 strikes rule, especially when starting out. Let the underdog serve 3 times. If there's no breakpoint scored, we just get out and move on. The best trades, the best scenarios with this are going to see an early breaker serve in game 1 or game 2. And those are the ideal perfect trades there. But if we don't get it by 3 service games, it's time to close that trade up and just look for a better opportunity. It's clearly not the type of opportunity that we're looking for. But let me just go back to this advanced. Like I said, I mean, if the favorite looks like they're getting close, then you could stick with it. But I would always say halve your stake by this point, because we are getting near to the business end of the match at this point, and your exposure in the market, if the underdog was to score another breakpoint at this point, you could see that price going down to close to 1.01, and your whole exposure is there for the taking at that point. So halve your stake, and then from that point on, just expect that whatever stake is in the market is at risk. So just keep that in mind. That is, but like I said, this is for the more advanced trader. Once you've got a lot of experience with using the boomerang method, revisit this video and go over this bit again, and then you could start to employ this with your trading. But let me just go back to that. Stick to this when you are just starting out. Stick to the 3 strikes rule, and then you'll do pretty well with this. So let's look at some risk mitigation as well when we're using the boomerang method. So let's look at what we can do if it's not looking great. If we got involved in a market and if the favorite isn't looking too good, then we can immediately remove 50% of the risk from the trade. Now, as you know, I don't like to confirm the loss. I don't like to just get out and just move on straight away. But I do like, if it's not looking good, if the favorite is not looking good and the underdog is still looking pretty dominant, I will just halve the risk on the trade, but still stick to the 3 strikes rule and the 3 service games after that. I think that's probably the best approach, because this way you could still make the profit. You could still make that the profit. It would be a smaller profit, but if you get it wrong, it's going to be a smaller loss. So that would probably be my approach. If the favorite is not looking good, but the underdog is still looking like the better player, that's probably the best approach. And then you can get out after the 3 service games. Or if that worst case scenario happens, which I'm going to cover here, the underdog scores the next break point, then we're going to have to look to exit the trade. But here's another tip, is that we're not going to cash out immediately. Again, a lot of newbies are going to think, okay, underdog scores the break point, let's just cash out, let's move on. But remember, the underdog now has to hold his serve. He now has to hold his serve, and there's a bit of added pressure on that underdog to hold the serve. So if the underdog does score the next break point, we're going to wait and see if the underdog can secure the break point before we exit. So if he secures the break point, we exit. That's when we accept the loss. But you're going to see some situations where the underdog scores a break point, and then the favorite scores a break point right straight after that. And if that happens, we just carry on and we stick to the 3 strikes rule, and we just wait for the 3 service games to play out.